I just finished listening to Fantology's latest podcast where they're inspired by Daniel Green's ranking system for authors and books in the fantasy sci-fi space. And I don't read a ton of fantasy. I read some. I read a lot more romantasy, and that's what I'm going to talk about in particular because they did spend a section of the podcast talking about some romantasy books and talking about this tier system. So a very brief, terrible overview, and you should just go watch their podcast to get a better idea of what I'm talking about. Daniel Green established tier 1 through tier 7. Tier 1 being AI slop, and tier 7 being the greatest of all time. And then kind of in this middle section, you have 3, which is average, not technically great, but it's there. And then 4 and 5, 4 being kind of brain candy and 5 being a trendsetter and technically well written. They talked about 7 being technically great and well written or being a personal connection to this book. One of them gives the example of Pet Sematary means so much and is a tier 7 for them because it changed the outlook of grief they had and in the timing they read it in their personal lives. So when they talked about Fourth Wing and ACOTAR in particular, one of them says oh, I think it's tier 3 because it's not technically great. I agree. And then another one's well, but it's a trendsetter. It brought romantasy into the bigger stage. It deserves this higher ranking because of the trend. And they kind of touched about this concept I want to talk more about a little bit, and how some series just make a reader a reader. You fall in love with a book in particular or a series, and now you are a reader. And I think that's what ACOTAR and Fourth Wing did for a lot of readers. And not only are they lifelong readers now because they read one of those books and fell in love with the world that was created, but it also inspired them to get online and start talking about what they're reading or get involved in book clubs. There's this far-reaching impact from reading a book that maybe is not technically great, but it impacts how they approach the rest of their reading. And I think reading is subjective. I think reading tastes develop over time. You develop a palate the more you consume something. And so I think with ACOTAR, Fourth Wing, some of these other books that aren't technically great or fantastic, the authors still deserve credit for inspiring other authors to write and for readers to actually continue reading and become readers and participate in these spaces. That's where I'm at.